Have you ever answered a phone call in the middle of the night and realized that by sunrise your entire life would never be the same again? At 2:03 a.m. my phone rang. 32 seconds later I was driving across town with blood pounding in my ears, praying I wasn't already too late. By the time that night was over, one woman would be in handcuffs. Another man would lose everything he'd spent decades building, and the people who thought they could hide behind wealth, reputation, and family ties would discover something they never expected. They had picked the wrong father to stand in their way. If you've ever wanted to see evil meet the consequences it deserves, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stay until the end. Because today's story proves one simple truth. Karma doesn't knock politely. Sometimes it kicks the front door down. My name is Daniel Carter. I'm 52 years old. My hands are rough from nearly 3 decades of installing hardwood floors. My left knee predicts rain better than the Weather Channel. And until that terrible night, I believed I'd lived a pretty ordinary life. Nothing glamorous. Nothing heroic. Just honest work, a faithful wife, and one daughter who had always been the brightest part of my world. Her name is Olivia. When she was little, she'd run into my arms every evening after work, convinced I could fix anything. Scraped knees, broken toys, nightmares, monsters hiding under the bed. Back then, I actually believed I could. But children grow up, problems become bigger, and fathers slowly learn that there are monsters no flashlight can chase away. My wife, Grace, and I raised Olivia to be gentle. Too gentle, if I'm being honest. She thanked waiters for bringing water. She apologized when someone bumped into her. She cried during animal rescue commercials. Grace used to smile and say, "The world needs more people like her." I always answered the same way. The world also eats people like her alive. I wish I'd been wrong. 3 years earlier, Olivia married Ethan Brooks. He was hardworking, respectful, and completely devoted to her. His job as a regional logistics manager kept him traveling for weeks at a time, but I never doubted how much he loved my daughter. He also had an 8-year-old daughter from his first marriage. Her name was Lily. The first time Lily visited our house, she asked if she needed permission to drink water. Not soda, not cookies. Water. Grace and I exchanged a glance across the kitchen. Something about that question settled in my stomach like cold lead. Over the following months, we noticed more things. Lily jumped whenever an adult raised their voice. She finished every meal in record time, as though someone might snatch the plate away. She apologized constantly. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry." For existing. Children aren't born carrying that kind of fear. Someone teaches it to them. At first, we thought it was simply shyness. We couldn't have been more wrong. The problem wasn't Lily. The problem was the house she kept returning to whenever Ethan left for work. His parents. Margaret and Richard Brooks. On the outside, they looked like the perfect grandparents. Beautiful brick home, perfect lawn, expensive smiles. Inside, something dark was growing. Olivia saw it long before the rest of us did. She never said much. She simply started volunteering to keep Lily more often whenever Ethan traveled. Every time she asked, Margaret's smile became just a little tighter, just a little colder. Looking back now, that wasn't irritation. It was fear. Because Olivia was getting too close to the truth, and in just a few months, that truth would nearly cost my daughter her life. Looking back now, the warning signs were everywhere. The frightening part wasn't that we couldn't see them. It was that we kept explaining them away. You tell yourself a child is just shy. You tell yourself every family has different rules. You convince yourself that strict grandparents aren't necessarily bad grandparents. That's what decent people do. We search for innocent explanations, because accepting the truth is far more terrifying. Unfortunately, people like Margaret Brooks depend on decent people doing exactly that. Margaret had a talent I'd never seen before. She could insult you without ever raising her voice. She'd compliment your clothes while making you feel poorly dressed. She'd praise your cooking before explaining how she would have made it better. Every sentence sounded polite. Every word left a bruise. Her husband Richard rarely spoke. When he did, everyone else stopped talking. Not because he was wise, because he expected silence. He wasn't loud all the time. He didn't need to be. The threat lived in his presence. A hard stare, a clenched jaw, the slow tap of his fingers against the dining table whenever someone disagreed with him. Even I found myself choosing my words carefully around him. Imagine what that felt like for an 8-year-old little girl. The first real alarm came during a 4th of July barbecue. Families laughed. Kids chased each other through sprinklers. Smoke drifted from the grill. It looked like one of those perfect family gatherings people post online. Then Lily accidentally dropped her juice. The plastic cup bounced harmlessly across the patio. No one else even reacted. Richard did. His face darkened instantly. Lily. One word. That's all it took. The little girl's entire body froze. Her shoulders tightened. Her tiny hands began shaking so badly she struggled to pick up the empty cup. I watched the color disappear from her face. Not embarrassment. Fear. Pure fear. Olivia reached her first. "It's okay, sweetheart," she whispered with a warm smile. "I'll help you." Margaret immediately stepped between them. "She made the mess," she said coldly. "She cleans it." Olivia looked directly into her mother-in-law's eyes. "She's 8. So? Children spill things. They also learn consequences." For several seconds, neither woman moved. The air itself felt heavy. Finally, Olivia crouched beside Lily anyway. Without saying another word, she helped clean the juice. Margaret smiled. But it wasn't kindness. It was the smile of someone silently declaring war. After that day, Olivia began paying closer attention. She started volunteering to keep Lily whenever Ethan traveled. Sometimes Margaret refused immediately. Other times she'd invent excuses. "She already has plans. She's staying here. Grandparents deserve time too." The excuses changed. The answer never did. No. One evening Olivia came over for dinner, looking exhausted. Grace noticed before I did. "What happened?" Olivia hesitated. "I think something's wrong." "What do you mean?" She looked down at her coffee. Lily asked if she could keep the lights on while she slept. Grace frowned. "So?" she said. "She gets locked in dark rooms when she cries too much." The room went completely silent. I felt my stomach tighten. Did she really say that? Olivia nodded slowly. Then she immediately pretended she'd been joking. Grace reached across the table and grabbed our daughter's hand. "What did Margaret say?" She laughed. Olivia swallowed hard. She said children have wonderful imaginations. I wanted to believe that explanation. God, I wanted to. Because the alternative was unbearable. Over the next several months, strange things kept happening. Lily arrived wearing long sleeves during the hottest days of summer. She flinched whenever someone reached toward her too quickly. She hid leftover bread inside napkins. Grace found tiny bruises on her arms more than once. Whenever anyone asked about them, Margaret always answered before Lily could. "She fell. She's clumsy. Kids play rough." Always another excuse. Always perfectly rehearsed. Olivia quietly began taking pictures whenever she noticed another bruise. She never told anyone, not even Ethan. She dated every photo, saved every message, documented every strange conversation. She wasn't planning revenge. She was searching for proof. Deep inside, she already knew no one would believe her without it. None of us realized it then. But those secret photographs would become the evidence that destroyed Margaret Brooks' entire world. And before that happened, my phone was about to ring at 2:03 in the morning. Some sounds never leave you. Not the sound of gunfire, not breaking glass, not even screaming. For me it was my daughter's breathing. Uneven, shaky, as if every breath hurt. Even now, when the house is quiet enough, I can still hear it. Grace and I had one simple rule. Nobody called after 11 o'clock unless someone was dead, dying, or sitting in a jail cell. So when my phone exploded with light at 2:03 a.m., every nerve in my body fired at once. I didn't even need to look at the screen. Somehow, I already knew. Grace shot upright beside me. That's Olivia. A mother always knows. I answered before the second ring could finish. "Sweetheart, what's wrong?" For a moment, nothing, only breathing. Ragged, broken. Then came 4 words that shattered my world. "Dad, come get me." She didn't sound like a 26-year-old married woman. She sounded like the frightened little girl who used to crawl into our bed after nightmares. My heart stopped. "Where are you?" Another shaky breath. "Margaret's house. Are you hurt?" Silence. Then a whisper so weak I almost missed it. "Please hurry." The line went dead. Not disconnected. Not hung up. Someone had ended the call. I was already pulling on my jeans before Grace switched on the bedside lamp. "What happened?" "Call 911. "What?" "Now." My voice came out louder than I'd intended. "There isn't time." Grace didn't argue. She grabbed her phone immediately. What do I tell them? Possible assault. My daughter called for help. Send every officer they've got. As she spoke with the dispatcher, I threw on boots without socks. Didn't care. Grabbed my truck keys. Wallet. Nothing else mattered. Grace caught my arm before I reached the front door. Her eyes were already full of tears. Daniel, bring her home. 4 simple words, but behind them, 1,000 fears. I kissed her forehead. I will. At that moment I believed I was making a promise. I had no idea it was about to become a war. My old pickup roared to life on the second try. The engine sounded rough. Normally I'd complain. That night I thanked God it started it all. The drive across town usually took 20 minutes. I made it in 11. I don't remember stopping at a single traffic light. I don't remember the speed limit. The only thing I remember was replaying Olivia's voice. Over and over and over. Not her words. Her breathing. People don't breathe like that unless they're terrified. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my fingers went numb. My knee throbbed from pressing the accelerator. Every second felt stolen. Every mile felt endless. I kept asking myself the same question. What if I'm already too late? Your mind does terrible things when someone you love is in danger. You imagine hospitals. You imagine police tape. You imagine funerals. You imagine things no parent should ever picture. I tried to stop. I couldn't. When I turned onto Margaret and Richard Street, everything felt wrong. The neighborhood was silent. Their enormous brick house looked peaceful beneath the porch lights. Perfect lawn, perfect flowers, perfect image. It looked like the kind of place featured in home magazines. But beautiful houses can hide ugly secrets. I parked so hard my truck jumped the curb. Didn't care. The front door was less than 20 feet away. Each step felt heavier than the last. Then, I noticed something. One downstairs light was still on. Someone was awake. Good, because someone was about to answer for what they'd done. I climbed the porch steps 2 at a time and slammed my fist against the front door. Bang. Open the door. No answer. I hit it again. Harder. Margaret, I know you're in there. The porch light suddenly flicked on. The door opened, just 3 inches. Held shut by a security chain. Margaret stood there. Hair perfectly brushed, silk robe neatly tied, face completely calm. Too calm. Far too calm for a woman whose daughter-in-law had just called her father crying for help. She looked me straight in the eyes, smiled politely, and said the words that would guarantee I would never forgive her. Daniel, Olivia isn't leaving tonight. For just a second, time froze. Margaret stood behind that chained door with the same calm expression she wore at family dinners, the same practiced smile, the same perfectly controlled voice, as if nothing was wrong, as if my daughter hadn't called me minutes earlier, begging for help, as if I were the one overreacting. Daniel, she sighed, almost annoyed. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. I know what time it is. Then perhaps you should go home. My daughter called me crying. She's emotional. Open the door. She's resting. I took 1 slow step closer. I said, open the damn door. She didn't flinch. Instead, she folded her arms across her chest. Olivia had too much wine. She became dramatic. She's staying here tonight, and we'll all talk in the morning like reasonable adults. Behind her, the house was silent. Too silent. I couldn't hear Olivia. Not a voice. Not footsteps. Nothing. Every instinct inside me screamed that something was terribly wrong. Then I heard it. A child crying. Very faint. Somewhere deeper inside the house. Not loud. Not hysterical. The exhausted crying of a little girl who had already cried herself empty. My blood turned to ice. Lily. Margaret quickly shifted, blocking my view even more. There's nothing for you inside. I looked directly into her eyes. You have 1 chance. Move. She smiled. I'm afraid you're trespassing. If you don't leave, I'll call the police. For a heartbeat, I actually laughed. It wasn't humor. It was disbelief. I already called them. That smile disappeared, only for a fraction of a second. But I saw it. Fear, the first real emotion she'd shown all night. Then she recovered. You wouldn't dare. She still thought she was in control. She still believed the expensive house, the perfect reputation, the polite voice, would protect her. She had absolutely no idea who she was talking to anymore. I've never been a violent man. I coached Little League, helped neighbors shovel snow, returned shopping carts to the cart corral. I spent my life avoiding fights. But there's something people never tell you about fatherhood. A father doesn't become dangerous because he enjoys violence. He becomes dangerous because someone else threatens what he loves. Standing on that porch, listening to a frightened child crying somewhere inside, I stopped being patient. I stepped backward. Margaret frowned. "What are you doing?" "I'm done asking." I lowered my shoulder and drove every pound of my body straight into the front door. Crack. The security chain exploded from the frame. The door slammed open. Margaret stumbled backward with a scream. I just did. I moved through that house like a man possessed. Living room. Empty. Dining room. Empty. Kitchen. Empty. Margaret chased behind me, shouting, "You've lost your mind. I'm calling my attorney. You'll pay for this." I ignored every word. Then I reached the sitting room, and everything inside me broke. Olivia lay unconscious across the couch. Her lower lip had split open. One eye was already swelling shut. Dark bruises covered her arms. Her left forearm bent at an angle no arm should ever bend. For one terrifying second I thought she was dead. My knees hit the hardwood floor. "Olivia." "Nothing." I grabbed her face gently. "Baby, it's Dad." No response. Then I saw it. Her chest, barely moving. She was breathing. Thank God she was breathing. My entire body shook with relief and rage at the same time. I slowly looked back toward Margaret. "What?" My voice barely sounded human. "Did you do?" She crossed her arms. Without a trace of remorse, she fell. I stared at her. "You expect me to believe that?" She was intoxicated. She lost her balance. It was an accident. Every sentence sounded rehearsed, prepared, like she'd already practiced them. Then, the crying started again. Closer this time. Coming from the hallway. I followed the sound. It led me to a small storage closet. The door was shut, locked from the outside. My hands trembled as I turned the handle. Inside, curled into the darkest corner, was Lily. Her knees pulled tightly against her chest. Tiny arms wrapped around herself. A fresh bruise burned red across her jaw. When she saw me, she didn't say a word. She ran, throwing herself into my arms so hard she nearly knocked me backward. She buried her face against my chest and whispered words I'll carry for the rest of my life. "Please don't leave me here." Then she whispered something even worse. "She hurts us when Daddy's gone." In that instant, everything changed. This wasn't one terrible night. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't even about my daughter anymore. This was years of fear, years of abuse, years of silence. And I silently made myself one promise. Margaret Brooks wasn't just going to lose an argument. She was about to lose everything she'd spent her entire life trying to control. The sound of distant sirens finally broke the silence. Blue and red lights flashed across the living room walls. For the first time since Olivia's phone call, I allowed myself one breath. Help was here. But my job wasn't over. Not even close. Lily refused to let go of me. Her tiny fingers clutched the back of my shirt so tightly that I could feel them trembling through the fabric. "It's okay," I whispered. "I've got you." She shook her head. "No." Her voice cracked. "She always says nobody will believe me." My heart shattered. An 8-year-old shouldn't know what hopelessness sounds like. Yet somehow, she already did. The front door burst open. "Police. Hands where we can see them." 3 officers rushed inside. Behind them came 2 paramedics carrying medical bags. The house suddenly filled with voices, commands, footsteps, radios crackling. One officer immediately knelt beside Olivia. Another separated Margaret from me before I could take another step toward her. Richard finally appeared from upstairs. He wasn't panicked. He wasn't confused. He looked annoyed, as though the police arriving at his house in the middle of the night was simply an inconvenience. "What is all this?" he demanded. The officer turned sharply. "Sir, keep your hands where I can see them." Richard frowned. "This is a family misunderstanding." I couldn't stay silent. "No." I pointed toward Olivia. "My daughter has broken bones." Then toward Lily. "That little girl was locked inside a closet. There is no misunderstanding. There is a crime scene." The paramedics carefully examined Olivia. One looked up at me. "Sir, is she allergic to any medication?" I swallowed hard. "No." We're taking her to County Memorial immediately. Possible concussion. Possible fractures. Every medical word felt like another punch to the chest. As they lifted her onto the stretcher, her eyes fluttered open. Barely, she looked at me, without really seeing me. Dad, I'm here. Her lips trembled. Lily, even half-conscious, even broken, she wasn't worried about herself. She was worried about that little girl. I leaned close. She's safe, I promise. A single tear rolled down Olivia's bruised cheek before exhaustion pulled her back into darkness. A female officer slowly crouched in front of Lily. Sweetheart, my name is Officer Reynolds. Can you tell me what happened tonight? Lily froze, completely silent. She looked toward Margaret. Pure terror filled her eyes. The officer noticed. So did I. I gently knelt beside her. You don't have to be afraid anymore. Lily looked at me, then quietly whispered. Grandpa hit Olivia. The room became perfectly still. Even the officers stopped writing. Officer Reynolds spoke softly. Who hit you? Lily's breathing became shaky. Grandpa and Grandma. She held Olivia down. No coaching. No hesitation. Just the heartbreaking honesty only children possess. Margaret suddenly exploded. She's lying. Richard pointed at Lily. She's been manipulated. Officer Reynolds stood up so quickly her chair scraped across the hardwood. Enough. Another officer immediately stepped between them and the child. At that exact moment, Margaret realized something. Control had slipped away. For the first time in years, nobody believed her. Grace arrived at the house moments later. She rushed straight toward the ambulance. When she saw Olivia covered in bruises, she didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply stopped walking. Her face lost all color. One hand covered her mouth. The other gripped the ambulance door so tightly her knuckles turned white. I had seen my wife frightened before. I'd never seen her look. Broken, I walked over. She looked at me with tears streaming silently down her face. What did they do to our little girl? For several seconds I couldn't answer, because if I spoke I knew I'd lose control. Instead, I wrapped my arms around her. And for the first time that night, I cried. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just enough for the tears I'd been holding back to finally escape. At the hospital, doctors confirmed what my heart already knew. Olivia had suffered a concussion. 3 cracked ribs. A fractured forearm. Severe bruising across her shoulders and back. The emergency physician looked directly at me before speaking. Mr. Carter, these injuries are not consistent with someone simply falling. I slowly closed my eyes. There it was. The truth. Spoken out loud. Margaret's carefully rehearsed lie had just collapsed. But something even bigger happened that morning. Child Protective Services interviewed Lily. Then a forensic pediatric nurse documented every bruise, every injury, every scar, every photograph became another piece of evidence. Every statement became another nail in Margaret and Richard Brooks's future. As the sun rose outside the hospital windows, I looked at my sleeping daughter, then at Lily curled up safely beside Grace, and I made one silent vow. I wasn't going to destroy Margaret Brooks with anger. I was going to destroy her with the truth. Because lies can survive an argument, but they never survive evidence. People think revenge happens in one explosive moment. A fist, a scream, a dramatic confrontation. They're wrong. Real revenge, the kind that changes lives forever, is patient. It doesn't rush. It waits until the truth is impossible to escape. And that's exactly what we did. Olivia spent 5 days in the hospital. Her arm was wrapped in a cast. 3 cracked ribs made every breath painful. The bruises across her face faded from dark purple to sickly yellow, but every new color reminded me of that night. Every morning I sat beside her bed. Every evening I promised the same thing. They're not getting away with this. She never asked for revenge. She only asked one question. How's Lily? Even after everything she'd suffered, her first concern was that little girl. Grace smiled through tears. She's safe, sweetheart. Olivia finally closed her eyes in relief. That single moment told me everything I needed to know. Good people worry about others even while they're suffering. Evil people worry only about themselves. Detective Marcus Hale visited the hospital 2 days later. Unlike the television detectives, he didn't make dramatic speeches. He simply carried a notebook already overflowing with evidence. He listened. Carefully, patiently, Olivia told him everything. From the first bruise she'd noticed on Lily, to the final blow that knocked her unconscious. She handed him her phone. Inside were dozens of photographs, each one dated, each one documenting another unexplained bruise, another frightened expression, another warning everyone had ignored. Marcus looked through them in complete silence. Finally he nodded. This, he held up the phone, isn't one bad night. It's a pattern. Exactly, that single word changed everything. Patterns are almost impossible to explain away. Meanwhile, Child Protective Services interviewed Lily several times with specially trained child psychologists. Nobody coached her. Nobody pressured her. They simply asked gentle questions. Lily answered in the heartbreaking way only children can. Grandpa said crying makes weak people. Grandma locked me in the laundry room. I wasn't allowed dinner because I dropped my milk. They told me Daddy would stop loving me if I talked. Every answer matched Olivia's account. Every detail matched the photographs. Every bruise matched the medical reports. Margaret's perfect little story began collapsing piece by piece, but she still refused to surrender. Within days, Margaret hired expensive attorneys. She told neighbors Olivia had attacked her. She claimed Lily was being manipulated. She even spread rumors that our family wanted Ethan's inheritance. Every lie sounded polished, convincing, calculated. For a while, some people believed her. Until the evidence arrived. Hospital records, emergency room photographs, police body camera footage, neighbor statements, school reports documenting Lily's fearful behavior months before the assault. Then came the recording. Months earlier, Olivia had secretly saved one of Margaret's angry voicemail messages. The prosecutor played it during questioning. "You are not that child's mother," Margaret's voice echoed through the room. "You don't get to tell this family how we discipline our own." The courtroom became silent. Margaret realized too late she had convicted herself with her own words. Richard tried a different strategy. He claimed everything had been an accident, one unfortunate misunderstanding. The prosecutor calmly placed enlarged photographs onto the courtroom screen. Olivia's fractured arm, Lily's bruises, medical reports, timeline after timeline. Then he asked one simple question. If this was one accident, why do these injuries stretch back over an entire year? Richard had no answer. For the first time since that horrible night, the powerful old man looked small. The jury deliberated less than 3 hours. When they returned, nobody looked surprised. Guilty, one word. That was all it took. Richard was convicted of felony child abuse and aggravated assault. Margaret was convicted of unlawful restraint, assault, child endangerment, and obstruction after preventing Olivia from calling for help. As deputies placed handcuffs around Margaret's wrists, she finally looked at me. Not with anger, not with confidence, with fear. Real fear. The kind she'd forced Lily to live with for years. She opened her mouth, maybe to apologize, maybe to blame someone else. I never found out, because I turned away before she could speak. Some people deserve your forgiveness. Others deserve your silence. That was the last gift I ever gave Margaret Brooks, my silence, because prison would be speaking to her for a very long time. And the greatest revenge of all was knowing she would spend every day remembering the night she believed no one would ever believe a frightened little girl. People often ask me what revenge felt like. They imagine it was the day the jury returned, the day Margaret was led away in handcuffs, the day Richard lost everything. They're wrong. That wasn't revenge. That was justice. The real revenge came much later, in the quiet moments they could never take from us again. 8 months after that terrible night, our family gathered in another courtroom. This one looked nothing like the criminal court. There were no deputies standing beside prisoners, no reporters, no angry lawyers, no accusations, only hope. Lily sat between Ethan and Olivia, wearing a pale blue dress. She kept swinging her little legs beneath the chair because they didn't quite reach the floor. For the first time since I'd known her, she wasn't afraid. She smiled, a real smile, the kind that reached her eyes. The judge looked down warmly. "Lily, do you understand why we're here today?" She nodded confidently. "Yes, ma'am." The judge smiled. "And do you want Olivia Carter Brooks to become your legal mother?" The courtroom became perfectly still. Everyone waited. Lily looked up at Olivia, then squeezed her hand. Without hesitation, without fear, without looking for anyone else's permission, she answered. "She already is." I heard Grace begin crying beside me. I couldn't blame her, neither could I. Not after everything we'd lived through. The adoption was finalized that morning. When the judge signed the final papers, Lily wrapped both arms around Olivia's neck. "I love you, Mom." Olivia completely broke down. So did Ethan. Even the court clerk wiped away tears. Some victories don't need cheering. They speak for themselves. Life slowly found its rhythm again. Olivia recovered. The scar above her eyebrow faded into a thin silver line. Her broken arm healed. But something else changed too. She decided to become a child trauma counselor. "I know what frightened children look like now," she told me one evening. "I want to be the adult who believes them the first time." I smiled proudly. Pain had tried to destroy her. Instead, it gave her a purpose. Ethan never spoke to his parents again. Not once. Letters arrived. He returned every single one unopened. Phone calls came. He blocked every number. Family members begged him to forgive. His answer never changed. "My daughter finally feels safe. I'm not risking that for anyone." I respected him more for those words than I ever could have imagined. Being someone's parent isn't about sharing blood. It's about protecting them, no matter who you have to walk away from. As for Margaret and Richard, their beautiful house sat empty. The perfectly trimmed lawn turned brown. The expensive flowers died. The neighborhood that once admired them now whispered their names for very different reasons. Their reputation, the thing Margaret valued more than almost anything, was gone forever. No amount of money, charm, or carefully rehearsed lies could bring it back. They had spent years controlling everyone around them. Now, the only doors opening and closing around them belonged to a prison. Poetic, simple, permanent. One afternoon, almost a year later, Lily and I were fishing at the lake. She looked happier than I'd ever seen her, laughing every time she caught another tiny bluegill. Out of nowhere, she asked me something. "Grandpa, are bad people always punished?" I looked across the calm water before answering. "No, sweetheart, not always." She frowned. "Then why were they?" I smiled. "Because one brave woman refused to stay silent." I looked toward Olivia, who was laughing with Grace on the shoreline. "Your mom chose courage instead of fear. And once the truth comes into the light, it's very hard to bury it again." Lily nodded thoughtfully. Then she smiled. "I want to be brave like Mom." My eyes filled with tears. "You already are." People still ask whether I've forgiven Margaret and Richard. The answer is simple. No, forgiveness isn't something anyone is entitled to. Some wounds heal, some scars remain, and some people lose the privilege of ever being welcomed back into your life. I don't carry hatred anymore. Hatred is heavy. I simply carry peace. Because every morning I wake up knowing my daughter is safe, my granddaughter laughs without fear, and the people who stole so much from others can never hurt another child again. That's enough for me. That's enough for any father. Because in the end, the greatest revenge wasn't watching two cruel people lose everything. It was watching the people they tried to break build a happier life without them. If this story moved you, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let us know in the comments. What do you think is more powerful, revenge or justice? Until next time, remember this: the truth may walk slowly, but karma never loses the address.